Okay, welcome to the EEAI Vision 2020 conference, everyone. This session is part of the K-12 formal education track and is titled Nature Programming for Homeschoolers. Thank you to NIPSCO, Mary Lee Environmental Center of Goshen College, and the North American Association of Environmental Education for sponsoring the conference. Please mute your sound and feel free to use the chat for questions, comments, or to share something relevant to the presentation. We'll open for questions at the end. You can also unmute yourselves throughout the program and ask a question if you'd like. Our speaker is Sarah Wolf, and she is the Senior Park Naturalist for Hendricks County Parks and Recreation, and she's based at McLeod Nature Park. Sarah worked as an interpretive park ranger and an interpretive naturalist at 3 national parks and 2 state parks. She graduated from Purdue University with a BS and an MS in Natural Resources and Environmental Science. Sarah serves on the EEAI board as well. So take it away, Sarah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Wolf, as Stephanie said, and I like to offer nature programming for homeschoolers. I was actually homeschooled as a kid, and I like being able to reach a different group that might not be reached by other types of programming. And you'll be able to see some of the benefits from reaching this group if you don't already reach homeschoolers. So you're welcome to chat in the chat box there. What intrigued you about this presentation? And then I'll have some prompts throughout too. So you can also reach me by email at another time if you have other questions or comments. So here's a little bit about what I'm planning to cover today. I'm going to go over a little bit about me so you can understand one homeschooler's story. I'll cover a little bit about homeschoolers and some of the reasons they homeschool and choose to do that. There are some good benefits to reaching homeschoolers. There are definitely challenges to working with them. I'll give you some tips on how to reach them and some programming tips and what has and hasn't worked well for me at my location. So hopefully this will be helpful for you. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so this is me and my family. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. My folks are there on the right, and they chose to homeschool all of us. And we've actually had some additions to the family now, some nieces and nephews coming along. So this is a couple of years ago. So my parents chose to homeschool for a couple of different reasons. I think they had a lot of peer pressure at school, and they were maybe guided in different ways that they would have not chosen to go themselves. They also chose to homeschool for some religious reasons also. So all of us were homeschooled. It worked really well for me. Some of my siblings would have preferred to not be homeschooled at times, but I think it worked for most of us. While I was homeschooled, it was very easy to go and do different things during the quote school day. This is my dad. He's a soil scientist and still works as a soil scientist. And here he's teaching at a 4th grade field day for a bunch of kids. And we were able to tag along, which was really nice. That's me there in the back with the shovel. So because we had so many conversations over dinner time, it seemed like every dinner time, Dad, why do we have to talk about soils again? But he would talk about soils, and I felt like I knew all of it. So there I'm in the back, and I've been teaching EE since I was about 7 years old. So, and there's my little sister with her fingers in her mouth. Homeschooling, like I said, allowed for some flexibility with learning, which was really great for me. I loved it. We were able to take a lot of co-op classes from our homeschool group in Crawfordsville. I took speech from one parent. I took geology from a different parent. And that geology program was also a field trip throughout southern Indiana. It was great. Every Friday we had PE classes. And then as a 9th grader, I took a biology class by someone who has a PhD in geology. And he was used to teaching graduate level students. And this was a college level biology class. I about died. It was so hard. But once I got to college, it wasn't very difficult because I'd already had it before. As a kid, I was in 4-H, and we never took summers off. we always did 4-H during the summer, and that counted as school. I was also able to volunteer and shadow at an animal hospital for some biology credit, and that was great. We could also take vacations during the quote school year, and there weren't as many people at, say, the state park that we were going to. So it was really good. And then when I was in high school, I was able to plan a family trip to the New Madrid fault. I was really interested in this. I read some books about the New Madrid earthquakes of 1811, 1812, and I was able to plan a family trip to go see some of those sites from that area, and it was really cool. Can you imagine how high school students would feel if they all got to do that for their family? Okay, I just want to go over a couple of terms and definitions of what homeschooling is to a former homeschool graduate, and then also what some terms that are being mixed in now. So traditional homeschooling is parent directed. This is where the parents decide what subjects their kids are going to learn and how they're going to go about doing it. Now, there are some guidelines from the state. Here in Indiana, it's very homeschool friendly. You have to have instruction for 180 days in English. And once you get into high school, then if you want to go to college, you need to be meeting some of those same credits that high school students would need to make. Homeschool students can sometimes take a few classes from their homeschool co-op or a community college, and sometimes a public or private school. Some schools will allow homeschool students to do that. So homeschooling is not staying at home all of the time. It often includes lots of field trips and volunteering. So even this COVID stuff has impacted traditional homeschooling. It has reduced the number of field trips and opportunities they've had, especially during the shutdown order, of course. Now, sometimes these terms are being included under the homeschooling term, and as kind of a traditional homeschool person, I do not include them, but I'm being welcoming to anybody right now. So e-learning and remote learning from a public school are sometimes being lumped in under the homeschool term, and other types of online school. So this would be learning from home is what I would call it, instead of homeschooling in the more traditional sense. So maybe that will help you understand where some homeschool people might be coming from. Okay. So there's some typical reasons people choose to homeschool. It might be some religious reasons, of course. There are kids who are gifted and they might be really bored in the classroom, so their parents can make a little bit more individual lessons and learning opportunities for them. There are a lot of kids who are homeschooled for learning disabilities, and it's because the parents can tailor their lessons to the student. They can also make it easier to possibly therapies and appointments and things like that. So definitely keep these in mind as you are planning programming for homeschoolers. Parents or siblings might have had a bad experience at school, and that could be a reason why they pull out of school. Health concerns, especially in this day and age of COVID, is a real reason why a lot of people are choosing to homeschool right now. In this picture here, the little boy pictured is my little cousin, and he has cystic fibrosis, which if he gets colds and things like that, it can be deadly for him. So they chose to homeschool once he got to his kind of school age, and they said they love it so much now that they would not go back. So they are homeschooling because of health reasons, and just continuing because they love it so much. There are a lot of people who have pulled out of any kind of public school and are trying homeschooling for the first time because of COVID. So our numbers of homeschoolers in the area west of Indianapolis have been very high, large groups, and they're even higher now because of COVID. All right, so there are some benefits to offering programming for homeschoolers. It might be a whole new audience for you. if you haven't already reached them. And in the chat window, if you do have homeschoolers attending, I would love to hear that in your programming. Homeschoolers aren't tied to a regular school day or school calendar, so this can be really flexible for you as a programmer. They usually don't care as much about hitting standards, so this can make your programming a lot more flexible. Also, they're going to probably bring the whole family, so it's going to be hard for you to really hit standards for, say, 4th grade, because you have preschool through high school. And I'll talk a little bit about that multi-age programming here in a little bit. Homeschool programs can help you fill your slow program weeks and months. So maybe during I-STEP testing or whatever testing might be going around in your area, if you offer some homeschool programs because the schools can't join, you can fill some of those blanks in your schedule if you need to. And these homeschoolers might also start attending your public programs too. So this is a picture of our fall festival activity of tree climbing. And there are some homeschoolers pictured here. They wouldn't have known about our festival until they started attending our normal homeschool programming. So it can really benefit you in multiple ways. And they can be a whole new volunteer source. So we offered a free homeschool program, and I'm good friends with the homeschool leader of this group. And there was some time after lunch, and I asked if the leader wouldn't mind to get the kids to come clean our maple sap buckets. So these kids cleaned 80 buckets in no time flat, which would have taken us probably a couple of hours to wash. So it was amazing help for us. So just a little bit more about programming and volunteering and that connection. So the boy pictured here in the tan with the orange hood, he and his family attended a do-it-yourself maple syrup workshop in January at our park one year. They came and they helped tap 60 maple trees in February with us. And he learned how to identify maple trees without the leaves on, of course, because that time of year there are no leaves. They went home and they tapped their own maple trees and they boiled sap at home to make maple syrup. Then they came back for our maple syrup field trip that we offered for homeschool families. And then they also attended our maple syrup days festivals. So do you see any benefits of reaching homeschoolers for your location, possibly with volunteering in mind? All right, there are some definite challenges for reaching homeschoolers and teaching them. So they often bring the whole family. This can be wide ranges of infants and toddlers up to high school, unless you limit the age range. And it's fine to bring the whole family and do programming for the whole family, but just make sure you're clear if you're welcoming to all ages or if it's really more recommended to a more narrow grade range. So more about the challenges. So be thinking about that wide range of students who might be coming. So in the picture on the left here, I have these spinner boards for our watershed or water cycle game. It's the raindrop journey. It's a activity from Project Wet. And these spinner boards will tell you the kids where to go from one section to the next as a raindrop. But it's not, it's too tall for some really short kids. And short kids also have a hard time spinning the spinner. And then also they're probably too young to be able to read and process the information. So definitely be thinking about your activities for homeschoolers. These two students on the right here are working through a flow chart to identify rocks and minerals for our rocks and minerals lesson. And we've noticed that homeschoolers tend to have a hard time reading, processing, and doing something with that information in a group setting. It might be noisier than they're used to. They might feel self-conscious about maybe being dyslexic or other things. So if you can reduce the amount of reading for homeschoolers, that's going to be really helpful and more successful for your families to have a good experience. Or you might say in the description, you should probably be able to read, or you need to have somebody who can read this to you nearby. I've done that in some lessons. definitely say and set your expectations for the parents before, during, and after the program. They're not, sometimes they can be a little squirrely, the kids and parents. So make sure you're telling what your expectations of the group are. Sometimes the kids are not used to working in group settings, so definitely if you expect the kids to raise their hand and wait to be called on, you need to make sure you tell them that those are your expectations. So raise your hand and wait for me to call on you, and you should be asking a question about our topic, not when is lunch and why is the sky blue? We get those too. I'm sure you do also from school groups also. All right, a few more challenges. Just be thinking about these as you're planning your programming. Some of the families might be homeschooling because of religious reasons. So you may want to consider the topics that you're offering, or be upfront in your description. If your program is going to cover evolution or the age of the earth, you may want to include that in there to avoid some maybe uncomfortable situations for some families or yourself. Some of the kids might be gifted. So we had a 4-year-old signed up as a 2nd grade level because they might be performing and reading at that level, but they are not at the physical ability of a 2nd grader. There are some families who are kind of free range parenting or homeschoolers, and we had a family, had a little boy who was maybe 6 or 7, didn't want to participate in the lesson, was having a really bad day. So mom let him just stay in the car by himself that was almost out of sight from the group. And that got me thinking, what would happen if he got kidnapped? Would that be something that I'm responsible for? So make sure you're telling what the expectations of your families are before and during your program. Now, if your program is trying to build from one to the next, if you need consistent attendance, this is going to be a real struggle. So don't count on this, or if you are, then make sure that's very clear in the description and the understanding of the people who are signing up. I cannot recommend this enough. Include a fee or possibly a refundable deposit, and require a confirmation several days in advance. When we offer free homeschool programs, we sometimes have over half no-show rates. And that's really not very fun because you've already allocated the staff and your resources for that program. And then now you don't need 3 people to be working that day when you could have had somebody off. So definitely include a fee. A small fee is fine. I don't feel so bad when they don't show up because I have their money. All right, so how to reach homeschoolers. I saw there was a question in Whova earlier today on how to reach them. So here are some ways on how to reach homeschoolers. So one good way is to go to the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. This can give you some ideas on some struggles that homeschoolers have with making sure they're following all the rules or whatever it might be. But you can also connect with organizations for your state. So if you go to the Homeschool Legal Defense website, there is a section there where you can look for your state organizations, and then within the state page, then there are different regions within Indiana, and it will give you contact information for that kind of main organizer, and they can possibly connect you with other homeschool groups in your area to help advertise your lessons. This is a website I found by just doing some Google searching. This is www.home-school.com rather. And this is another way to connect to some groups in your area. But I found also just going to Facebook and type in homeschool groups near me. We have probably more than 10 in our area. And that's a good way to connect with people that way. I think the ringing is my computer fan. Homeschoolers are not always on Facebook, so making a homeschool newsletter like through MailChimp might sometimes be a good way to reach your homeschool families. So our homeschool newsletter went from 80 email addresses to near 310 months. And this can be a way where you can advertise other programs and not just the homeschool programs. In MailChimp, you've got a way where you can have the link within the newsletter for subscribing. So the friends can forward it on to other people and they can easily sign up for that through the newsletter itself. All right, a little bit more about how to reach homeschoolers. The groups can range from very organized classes to informal field trip groups. So sometimes it's important to realize that. There's a group near us and they're very, very organized, and parents will reach out to us months and months in advance trying to get field trips scheduled because they have to get it on their group calendar for people to sign up. And then others are like, are you offering any field trips tomorrow? So it's a whole range. Often there are parent meetings or moms meetings, and sometimes you can go speak to these meetings to share some of the resources that you offer. Libraries are a great way to connect with other homeschoolers. Homeschoolers usually use libraries a lot, so they will often have some connections. Or maybe you could put up a flyer at the library. It really helps to have an inside connection, like someone who is actually homeschooled. It kind of helps make your program seem a little more legitimate, and you understand some of the things that homeschoolers deal with. If you see other organizations offering homeschool programs, programming, ask them for a connection. Maybe you're seeing that the library is offering some homeschool programs. Can I pop into that program time and advertise my program too? So that can work too. Has anybody already connected with homeschoolers, or do you know a homeschool connection in your area already? There are more and more groups popping up all the time. So even if you feel like you don't have any connection, you might be able to find some new ones now. All right, I wanted to share some homeschool field trip options that we offer with Hendricks County Parks. So one option is a homeschool parent can organize a field trip like a teacher. They can request the lessons that they want. These field trips are usually around 2 hours. They are often free if it's during one of our field trip months and if they choose lessons from our free list. There are also other lessons that are available for a fee. We require a minimum of 10 students to sign up. You may want to clarify what a student is and not just child, because it might be an infant or a toddler. So making sure you have 10 students who are maybe the 2nd through 5th grade range or something like that. I definitely recommend charging a small fee so that you don't have that no-show rate with nothing to gain from it. We occasionally offer homeschool field trip days also, and this can be like a big field trip that any family can sign up for. These can be 2 hours or longer, and they usually include a lunch break. They are sometimes free or with a small fee, and we usually pre-select these lessons. Families can register. They don't have to belong to another group or know any other homeschool families. This can be really good for folks who are new to the homeschooling world or possibly just new to the area. This is a great way to fill your slower field trip months, and I'm going to share a little bit more about this in a few minutes. I started offering a monthly series. I'm calling it Homeschool Ecology, and I started in January. These are 2-hour programs. They are $10 for older kids and $3 to $5 for the younger kids. Families can register. They don't have to be part of a group. It's a great way to connect those families with other homeschool families, and it's a great way to fill your field trip months that might be a little slower, and I'm going to share a little bit more about this here in a minute. All right, if you're offering free field trips for your homeschool families, I definitely recommend using something like free Google Forms. And I just gave a presentation yesterday with some more tips on Google Forms, so you can head over to that once the recording has been posted. Definitely do this because your programs may feel very fast and you don't want to go through a lot of email for this. In Google Forms, you can customize your form to ask the questions that are important for your program. On this form here, we ask the approximate grade levels of the children who will attend. I definitely would change that now, asking the ages instead of the grades, because like I said, that we had a 4-year-old who was signed up as a second grader, and it's definitely not a second grade abilities on all fronts. If your program is for kindergarten through 5th grade, but you're open to preschoolers and kids 6th grade and up, you might want to include a little statement in there that, it says, this is not especially appropriate for you, but you're still welcome to attend. I like to include that wording in there. Now, Google Forms, when the responses come in, they are graphed, and this can help you figure out ways to group your families. If you're taking the larger group and dividing into smaller sections, this can help you decide how to do that. Some more on customizing your questions. This field trip here with this form that's pictured was for one where we were going to visit our observation beehives. And we wanted to know if there were any families who would not want to visit them due to severe allergies or extreme fear. So this gave an option for the families to choose not to go view the observation beehives. This is a good question here to ask a really general question to get lots of different responses. So the question is there anything else we should know about your family to ensure that this field trip is enjoyable for everyone? And this has been a good question to ask because sometimes we'll get information about reduced mobility of some folks. Maybe somebody broke their ankle, or they have other abilities that change their duration of hiking. We've also heard that people have severe fears of flying insects. And so that can make it easier to address, well, we're going to be out in nature and we'll have butterflies flying around us and they won't hurt us. So that can make it easier to tailor your lessons and know what's going on if somebody starts freaking out. If you're planning to break your bigger group into smaller groups, it's also a nice thing to put an optional question on there to include the name of another family you would like to be grouped with. So that's been nice for families to have. You can paste your Google Forms link into the tickets field on your Facebook event. And this picture here on the right is a little funny because this was from 3 years ago when we first started offering some free field trips for homeschoolers. And it says the field trip was full within 24 hours of posting. Well, now our field trips often will fill within 2 to 3 hours, and these are programs where there is a charge. So it's kind of cute. We thought 24 hours was a good deal. So this is a schedule from one of our free field trip days where we pre-selected the lessons. We decided to divide them into 2 different groups and take a look at, we do include, we say the field trip starts at 9:45. It doesn't really start until 10. Homeschoolers are notorious for late arrivals, so plan for this. I would also include a really long lunch break. If you're used to having maybe 30-minute lunch breaks for school field trips, I would include more time for homeschoolers because they're going to be networking with each other, and because they're bringing the whole family, they might have some diaper changes to do and longer bathroom breaks needed and things like that. So definitely plan for all of those things. Here's a little bit about my homeschool ecology series I've started offering. So I first started offering for the older kids, for 12 to 18-year-olds with their younger siblings, because if you don't offer something for the younger siblings, the older ones likely will not be able to come. So I have 2 concurrent sessions at the same time. one group for the older kids, one group for the younger kids. Another staff member teaches the younger ones of a similar topic. If you have a registration system where you have the ability to lock registration to the ages, I would definitely recommend doing that. We have people who will get around our locked registration by lying on the child's birthday, which is a little frustrating because I have so many younger homeschoolers who are trying to join anything. And so I want to offer something for the older kids. There are not very many programs offered for older homeschool kids. And I hide the younger kid program on my registration system. So otherwise I'd have people trying to join who don't have the older kids. Well, the older homeschool program has been very much gaining in popularity. There are so many people who are homeschooling with younger kids that there was such the demand that we opened up another session just for younger kids. I started at ages 4 to 11, but I was finding that I had so many kids on the much younger age range of the 4 to 11 that now I have it 6 to 11. I do have it locked. You have to be 6 years old by the program date. Younger siblings, 5 and younger, are free, but you have to have kids in that who are paying for that program. So the older kid program is $10. The younger ones are $3 to $5. And we also offer a preschool series now, and we usually have the same or similar topics from the homeschool programs to the Tadpole program, or Tadpole Time is our preschool series name. And so we'll try to get the ones who have the very much younger kids, ages 2 to 7, to come to this preschool program instead of trying to register all of those age range, those kids on the very young part of the age range for the homeschool series. Tadpole Time fills very quickly. The younger homeschool program, Homeschoolers series, fills within a couple of hours, and then the older one doesn't fill quite as fast, at least for us right now. So here's what our homeschool ecology outline looks like for one of our programs. So I will teach the older kids. One of my other staff members takes the younger kids with their parents, and they do some similar topics at different locations. So we have to make sure we're not in the same area at the same time because of space and materials and things like that. I did want to point out on this outline, when Joe was giving the B talk for the younger kids, the very much younger kids have a loose parts play activity, and I want to show you what that looks like here in a minute. So for the younger kids programs, they're kind of open-ended on when they finish. The older kids, it's a 2-hour program. So this is what loose parts play looks like. If you are not familiar with loose parts play, you definitely need to connect with Carla Gull because she's all about this. It's kind of toys where there's no right or wrong way to play with them. And so I offered this butterfly matching kind of activity for the very much younger kids while we were doing the bee talk. So we thought that would help give them something to do, and it did. This is a schedule from our Tadpole Time, our preschool series, but I wanted to highlight part of the back part of the program. So it's billed as a 2-hour program, but because the younger kids, the 2 to 7-year-olds, sometimes they're just done even after 15 minutes, and that's okay. But having that end of the program time to be really free time, there's self-guided sideline activities. They might have sensory bins, coloring sheets, storybooks, things like that, or crafts that can be packaged to take home. Those are all good things to do for your homeschool programs because of the multiple ages. These are some examples of some take-home craft kits that we have put together. There's a butterfly kit, and then there's a great blue heron craft. So you make sure you have all of the materials or list what they might need from home on their sheet, and then include all the other pieces with a picture of the final project on the instruction sheet. For homeschoolers, you definitely want to send a confirmation and reminder email with all the details. Again, you might want to ask the families to confirm if they're coming or not. And this reminder system has worked well for us. Also, charging has worked well. They are more likely to show up if they had to pay. So I wanted to share a few activities that are in the area that could give you some ideas about homeschool programming for you. So Eagle Creek Park near in Indianapolis offers a homeschool jamboree, usually twice a year. They have 150 students can usually sign up for this. They do charge. It's $15 per kid. It's kind of an all-day program. The kids can be from 7.5 to 14 years old. That does make it very difficult to plan programming for them. They're mostly on the younger end of that. Parents are not required to stay. These are some of the activities that they offered: archery, nature games, hikes, tree climbing, things like that. And their program fills in 30 minutes of opening. They don't even advertise it anymore because it is so popular and there's such a demand for it. So if that helps inspire you to offer programs for homeschoolers, I don't know what will. They do offer lots of activities. Here's a picture of one of their park manager in tree climbing gear, the harness and things, showing how the kids how to do that. And I am over on the right leading nature games. This is a group, it's based out of Indianapolis, but it is statewide. So if you're here in Indiana, this is a nice one to just kind of watch what they're doing. And they might ask you to help with some of their activities. This is called Nature Studies for Indie Homeschoolers. And Julie Milks is the organizer of this. I am not sure I've actually met her in person, but she'll set up kind of field trips that are throughout the state that are based on some kind of topic for everybody together. They did come to our park for a creek study, and they went to Turkey Run, and they go to Potato Creek, and they go to the south, and they go all over. And they will pay if you need to. So just a little bit of brainstorming and sharing. If you don't already have a homeschool contact, how can you go about finding one? Does this, do any of my tips help you find a homeschool contact? What do you think you could offer for your local homeschoolers? And you're welcome to unmute yourself or type in the chat box if you have any answers or thoughts or questions too. Which ages or grades do you think you'd be able to best reach? And how will you share your opportunities with local homeschoolers? Do you think any of those methods of reaching those homeschoolers will help reach your local groups? Anybody have any thoughts there? Really interested in offering homeschoolers for high school age, yes. And I will likely help share your programs with my audience, Stephanie, as long as you're not on the same day as my programs. I do have mine advertised, or not advertised yet, but I have selected my days for February through April so far. So I will, you can check back with me on dates if you want. Yes, we can coordinate. I'm getting people from my older high school program, or older homeschool program rather. They all for September or October rather, they were all coming from over an hour away. So they're willing to drive if you're offering something that they're interested in. So they were coming from Lafayette, they're coming from south of Indianapolis, they were coming from Lebanon. None of them were coming from within my county, which was really interesting. So there are some great regional homeschool Facebook pages where I advertise all of my stuff, and that helps get people from a wider range of distance. Any other thoughts or questions or horror stories of reaching some homeschool groups?
I'm going to chime in here, Sarah, because I could keep chatting to you, but I think I can also unmute myself and talk to you. So yeah, we've struggled with, we're changing our programming maybe drastically anyway right now, but we've always struggled with reaching high schoolers. And I think one of the main reasons with that is because we've tried with, not homeschooled, and high schoolers have a really tight and rough schedule. And so they
Yeah.
can't just take a day for a field trip all the time.
Right.
It's harder for them to do that. And so we've struggled with trying to get high school groups to us. We have an amazing resource for them. And of course, we're a university. I'm at Marian University, for those that don't know. And so that would be a great way to get them to the university too.
Yeah.
If, that was something that interested them based off of what we were doing in our outdoor space, the Eco Lab, then, that could be an option for them going further. So this gives me an idea too, because I've always wanted to have more homeschool groups, but like you say, they come with different challenges. And so how do we meet those, and how do we find them? And I think that maybe reaching out to homeschool groups with high school specific or that high school age programming might be some way we can bring more high schoolers to us.
Yeah. Yeah, we struggle with reaching older kids too. We don't really offer school field trips or lessons for older public school kids because of that, because they have a hard time getting there in time and then back to school. And also previously, the folks who were in my position before I got there were also not qualified or comfortable to teach at upper levels. And so anyway, we started trying to reach out to the older homeschoolers, and this has been working. And we also have some other teen and high school programs too that can kind of feed off of each other too. So that's helpful. You could also check out like offering some older scout programs too, and that might give you some ways to reach some older folks. Well, I hope this was helpful for everybody, and there's some websites you can look for groups in your area. I'd be happy to chat more with anybody by email or on the chat through the Whova app. Throughout the conference, I'll be kind of in and out a little bit. So anyway, hope this was helpful for you, and I hope you have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I enjoyed that a lot. I learned a lot of good things. So thanks. And I'm definitely going to check out your other presentation that you did yesterday, which is called Free Online Tools to Increase Efficiency at Work. I think we could all benefit from some tips on that.
Yes, I talked about Google Forms and Sign Up Genius. I love both of them.
Yeah, I've used Sign Up Genius, but not Google Forms. So I'll have to check that out.
Oh yeah, I got really excited when I started seeing all the things that Google Forms can do, and I just learned a new tool too, and I shared that in my presentation.
Okay, good. Well, I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Sarah. Thanks to everybody who joined us. Be sure to continue these discussions in the Whova app. Feel free to chat or go on any of the discussion boards. Please fill out the online evaluation form for each session that you attend, and save the date for the EEAI 2021 conference, November 12th through the 14th.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie.